How are you going to get referrals without asking? Woo! This is going to be an amazing show today. We have just a phenomenal guest that's going to tell you how to do that, to share with you the great wealth of knowledge over her years of experience and her just vast knowledge of how the referral game really works. So exciting stuff. I'm sorry, I'm struggling a little bit today with my voice, so I will have my guest talk way more than me, which she should be, and it will be amazing. So you won't have to hear me as much today, grumbling here today. So getting over some stuff. But if you have not signed up for the March 3rd and 4th mastermind, the small group mastermind in Breckenridge, Colorado, you're missing out. Get on geniusloanofficer.com and schedule your call today. See if you are possibly a fit for that. So, all right, here we go. We have an award-winning author here of the book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. Stacey Brown Randall, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Adam, for having me. I'm excited to be here. It would be better, though, if we were in Breckenridge, Colorado right now.
Yes, it would. It would. I agree wholeheartedly. Going down the slopes and
yes.
So going down the slopes and asking for a referral. No, we're not asking for referrals.
Never.
But yeah, I love this. And by the way, love the green outfit. It goes along with the green book outlining. I love that. It's pretty cool. Green's actually my favorite color. So there we go.
I love it.
Yeah, this is going to be a green money making session today for our folks out there, because they're going to find out the polar opposite ways probably to do some things that they've been doing. So, and be able to generate more referrals. So love to hear about that. And love to hear about you and what this journey and path has been for you as an entrepreneur and the growth of your business and getting out here and writing an amazing book. So love to hear about you and how that journey all took place.
Well, I'll tell you, writing a book is a little bit for me as a love-hate relationship. Like, you love the idea of starting it and you love it when you're done. And then everything in between is just a lot of work. So
yeah.
I think people don't talk about how much work sometimes that is. And I'm right back in the heart of it right now, trying to finish up book number 2. So I'm right in that place of hate, not loving every minute of that. But thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. It's always fun to come on and talk to an audience who is interested in hearing about referrals without asking. Adam, I wish I could tell you, I woke up one day and God was like, hey, Stacey, we're going to make you brilliant on how to generate referrals without asking. Unfortunately, I had to get there through the school of hard knocks. And I actually had a business that failed. It was an HR consulting firm that I had for almost 5 years. It didn't quite make it to the 5-year mark. And actually had to hang up my shingle. We're so excited to put out our shingle when we get into business ownership. And then I had to hang it up and I had to go back to corporate America. And, after I kind of got over the massive ego blow amongst all the other things that happens when you have a business that fails, and hopefully not everybody listening is in this club with me. But, when you kind of reflect back, you kind of pay attention to what went wrong. And what do I need to change moving forward? Because I knew that I was going to start another business. I knew being an entrepreneur at heart was really something that I wanted. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So I knew being a business owner was something I was going to do again. But I would like to have been more successful, right? Go round number 2. It's how do we make this a little bit more successful? And so I paid attention to where all my clients came from. And I think it's such an important exercise for anyone to do. Where are your leads? Where are your prospects? Where are your clients coming from? And when I looked back, I realized with my first business, all of them came because I was always hustling. It was always because I was on this board or belonged to that networking group, or I was having the 7 million cups of coffee with that person. And I realized that every client I did land for the years that my HR consulting firm was successful, I was working entirely too hard. And I have 3 children. So as they've gotten older, that becomes even increasingly harder. I can't go to a rubber chicken dinner every night, or even a virtual event nowadays every night of the week to network. And so I was like, wow, I was networking. I was pounding the pavement. That's got to change when I start my second business. And of course, everybody knows, like, even if you don't know that much about referrals, everybody knows that's like the best way to generate business, right? To bring in new clients is to have someone refer a new client to you. And so I was like, well, did I get any referrals? And Adam, I'll tell you, when I looked back at my first business, not one single client came by referral. I was like, well, we're going to have to fix this, right? With business number 2, I was like, we're going to have to fix this. And what I realized is that if you go to Google and you ask, right, hey, how do I get referrals, or any training in your industry or just about any of the other industries out there, the number one way that you were taught to generate referrals is to ask for them. And that does 2 things, right? Number 1, it means that the only trigger you have to receiving referrals comes every single time that you are asking, which means that's a lot of work. And a lot of times you have to be asking. And what it doesn't pay attention to is the fact that everybody it's turning off that doesn't want to be asked to refer you. So I paid attention to that. And I was like, I don't want to ask either. That's not how I want to show up in the marketplace. I don't want to compensate or do kickbacks for it. I don't want to be overly promotional and gimmicky. Like, I have a brand reputation I want to have in the marketplace. And so when I started my second business, I was like, I'm going to do everything the opposite of what they teach. And it really was, I'll be honest, it was throwing spaghetti on a wall. It was like, let's see what sticks. How can I get referrals? What does this look like? And it wasn't until I had finished my first year in business with my second business, and this was a productivity and business coaching practice, that I realized I'd actually generated 112 referrals without asking in that first year. And I started paying attention to, like, well, what was I doing? And at the same time, I was having clients who were saying, hey, you're getting a lot of business. How are you doing it? And I was like, oh, I get referrals, and they're like, teach me. So that forced me to realize, oh, there's a process, there's steps, and there's things that I do pretty consistently that have become a system that I've now taught to thousands over the last decade about how do we get referrals without having to ask for them, or doing any of those other things we don't want to do, like networking to know a ton of people, or hoping they'll just happen, or kickbacks, or compensation, or networking to just know a ton of people. That the truth is, at the end of the day, you can generate referrals, but you're gonna have to flip how you think about referrals. And really, it was a necessity for me to have business number 2 not end in yet another business failure, that I figured out this referral strategy and then eventually shifted it to being the sole focus of what I teach other business owners to do.
That's amazing. Well, kudos to you for going back out there and doing it again, and realizing, hey, listen, I just gotta probably just have to make some adjustments, and I know I can make those adjustments, and I'm going to boldly step out again. Congratulations for doing for all your success, and way to go. And I hope all the listeners out there, just, if you're down right now and you think, okay, well, I'm doing X amount of deals, and oh my gosh, it's tough, and maybe I don't know if I can do this. Like, up until now, you were able to do that, but going forward, you got so much more. You got so much more that you can accomplish, and you can have, opportunity, failures, however you want to say it. And it just gives an opportunity to grow and be even better. And what this allowed our great guest here, Stacey, to do is absolutely grow to a point where she wasn't at before, and far beyond that, and learn systems and learn things that it forced her to learn things that were going to make not only herself better, but write a book and help others become great as well. So I tell you, that is a great, great thing that you've done. And again, kudos to you for picking up and going, and that's a common trait between most entrepreneurs that's done really well, is that, they've had, some hiccups or failures or whatever along the line. And then it forced them to be better and look at their processes and all that. So great job. I love that story. Very inspiring. So way to go.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'd love to continue this and see so I love in here in this book, it says, and by the way, pick up a copy. You can get it on Amazon, people. You can get it. Where else can you get this?
It's wherever books are sold.
Wherever books are sold, baby. Ooh, that is awesome. That is awesome. So you can get this copy wherever books are sold, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. a simple 5-step plan to a referral explosion. Ain't that a great title right there? So pick up a copy, read through it. I highly suggest it here. And you can already tell the guest knows what she's talking about. Let's dive deeper. So, one thing I like in here is it says something along the lines of, it stands so firmly against even paying for referrals, which is great in the loan game, because you know how much we can pay for a referral? Zero, or we get our license pulled. So it's not even a thing. It's not like car dealerships. They have their salesman. There's like, oh, I'll give you $100 to refer somebody. It's like we cannot do any of that stuff as loan officers. So this is great. I love that that you put that in there. But why, even if we could, let's say, for example, somebody could put the money in, a loan officer could say, I can give $100 referral to make back $3,000 because I'm going to make $3,000 a commission on a loan, for example, but I can pay $100 out to get $3,000 back. Like, what is the pitfalls of that? Why would we stand against that?
Yeah, and I work with a lot of industries that can compensate. And then, of course, I work with a lot of industries like yours and attorneys that cannot compensate for referrals. And my answer is always the same. Whether you can compensate or you can't compensate, you shouldn't. And the reason why is because the minute you decide that you're going to pay somebody to refer you, you start commoditizing your relationship with them. And it's the same thing when you think about it from an asking perspective too, right? When you ask somebody for a referral and they weren't prepared to give you one, and they weren't prepared for your question. And let me just say, they're never prepared for you to ask them, but they're not prepared, right? You actually commoditize that relationship too. You make it about work, right? You make it about work they now need to do for you and finding people that they can then send to you. And that's why most of the time when you ask for referrals, it doesn't work. It's the same thing with compensating for them. And I always tell folks, it's one thing to be a real estate agent and to be able to compensate another real estate agent when you give them, a potential client. Like, that is like signed documentation, all above board. The buyer, the seller, everybody knows, hey, when you refer me or you send me to this other agent because you don't work in my area, there's compensation happening and there's documentation that is signed. It's the buyer knows, right? In that moment, the client, the prospect, they know, oh, that's right, compensation's happening. What people don't pay attention to is when you do it under the table, like you do it as like a kickback or under the table, what folks don't pay attention to is ultimately, right, put yourself in that prospect or that client's shoes. If I am looking for your recommendation and you recommend someone to me, and then I find out later you recommended them to me because you got paid, you're not helping me with my problem. You're making a buck off my problem, and it wasn't disclosed. So not only does it commoditize the relationship with the referral source, and they're only going to see that as a commoditized relationship, not the way we want them to view it, as a real relationship where there's consistency and then, ongoing referrals received. Not only is it commoditized, then we have to pay attention to actually how it's going to impact the client if they were to find out that there was a commission paid on the back end. And so that's why I always tell folks, like, even if you can compensate, I wish you wouldn't, because there's a lot of pitfalls to it.
Wow. That is, gosh, I love that. I could not love that whole segment more because yes, 100% commoditizing ourselves is something that loan officers do all the time, right? We think that, people look at themselves as just a loan officer, just as someone that can get the loan done, just as someone that's asking for referrals, just as someone that is not really adding the value. And we start commoditizing ourselves so much if we start thinking that way, if we're just asking. And I think that becomes where all the way down the line, all these steps happen to where we think as loan officers, not me personally, but like this is out in the market where we're begging for business, right? The begging for business, because all these steps have happened because we commoditize ourselves so much that even when we try to have a genuine conversation, this is what I see with loan officers, even when they're trying to have a genuine conversation, they're still commoditizing themselves so much up until that point that it still feels incongruent to Harley helping, incongruent to me being a value add. because
Right.
the commoditizing has happened in layers and layers and layers beneath the surface before that real conversation shows up. And then you're missing out on those partnerships that you could, because you've just chipped away. You've chipped away at your value. And now we're begging for business no matter who we call and how we show up. That's how loan officers are, are really commoditizing themselves and just taking all the power curve away from how they show up and how they are going to be able to partner with great folks. So I love that. Could not love that more. I hope do yourselves a favor out there. Rewind what Stacey said for that segment right there, seriously, and listen to it about 3 times. Even if you want to skip over me the next time here, literally listen to that about 3 times, because that is so instrumental to your business, more than maybe Stacey's probably going to come up with some fire here that's going to surpass that. But I'm telling you, that point right there can help your business so much. And the way you look at yourself as a business professional, as we like to call them, an LEO, a loan executive officer, not just a loan officer, not just a commodity, not just somebody showing up and throwing up and somebody asking and begging and pleading for sales. We're showing up as a gosh, that is so great. So thank you so much, Stacey, for sharing that. Love that. So would you like to go through any kind of 5, just an overview of the 5 steps? Where did you like, you take this wherever Stacey thinks that would best benefit our listeners. I'm going to shut up and let you, because you are doing an amazing job.
Oh, you know what, Adam, that's dangerous, right? Because you're just turning it over to the reins of your
You're
podcast.
taking it over.
Who knows?
I trust you. You built trust within me. I'm referring you, my clients on here, saying, go ahead, service.
That's fine. I mean, I may keep you on here for the next 4 hours then, because there's just no telling, right? Like where this could go, and will she ever shut up? I mean, this truly is one of those topics that I could talk about forever. And when people get me going on this, my kids are always hoping they're not around. You're like, oh God, here she goes again. Like, oh, everybody go find something else to do. Yeah. She'll be talking forever. You know, what I find the most fascinating thing about referrals, and that it's the thing that we don't pay attention to enough, is really understanding where they fit within our sales strategy. Because I think before you can understand the 5 steps to getting those referrals without asking, really, it's kind of also understanding, like, when you said, you said a great thing when you were like, you got to rethink, right? Kind of how you're thinking about the referral perspective. And that's like how you show up. And like, sometimes people have these hangups to how they show up, because they always show up the same way, and it's always about business. And so then they're like, they start to doubt themselves. They start to question themselves, and they feel like they're begging for business because that's all they're ever talking about. And I think that's really important, because what that means is that you've been taking the idea of referrals and relationships that can give you referrals, and you've been looking at them from the typical sales strategy perspective. And the typical sales strategy perspective is you've got to do prospecting activities and you've got to do marketing activities. And those 2 sides to your sales strategy is what's going to bring you clients. So that's great. And yes, you need prospecting and you need marketing. The problem is, for decades and decades and decades, you've been taught that referrals must fit within either of those 2 sides. You've been taught that referrals have to fit within prospecting, short-term mentality. How fast can I get you to a referral? Oh, that's where the advice, the tactics come from, to ask or pay or network to know a ton of people and always be seen, right? And then on the marketing side, right, if you've been told or taught that referrals have to come from a marketing perspective, that's where we see the overly promotional and gimmicky things we see people doing, like the bag of goldfish with a tag on it that says, I'm fishing for your referrals. Don't do that. Like, nobody do that. Stop doing that. You show up looking like you feel, which is pretty overly promotional and gimmicky, and in some cases really cheesy. Now, of course, if that works for you, I don't want to break anything that's working for somebody, but for most of us, that's not something we would do. And so if you're thinking about referrals from that marketing perspective, it's the referral marketing, which I'm like, that's not a thing, but everybody makes it a thing. that tactic is then to be overly promotional and gimmicky. Like putting in your email signature line, the greatest compliment you can give me is a referral, is actually quite promotional and really cheesy and gimmicky because it doesn't have the intended impact that it did 10 years ago when it was new and novel. It's not new and novel anymore, and nobody's seeing it. And it's certainly not triggering anybody to think about referring you. So the problem is, what I find is that people are constantly paying attention to these old school tactics that, because they've been taught to them about referrals, like, oh, they just have to come from your prospecting, or your referrals have got to come from your marketing efforts. That's not where they belong. Referrals don't fit in prospecting and they don't fit in marketing. And in fact, your sales strategy is not a two-legged stool. It's not just prospecting and marketing. There's a third leg, which is good because three-legged stools are way more comfortable to sit on than two-legged stools. And that third leg is the referral strategy. You actually have to have an entirely different plan if you want to generate referrals, and particularly if you want to generate referrals the way I talk about it, which is without asking for them. You've got to have a third plan in your business. Yes, have your prospecting. Yes, have your marketing, but then also, right, have a referral plan. And that means when you have a referral plan, you're never talking directly to the prospect. You're talking to the referral source, to the person who knows the prospect that could send somebody to you. And that's not just real estate agents in your world. I know it's a big one, but it's not just them. And so it's paying attention to the people that are able to refer you or have referred you and creating a plan to take care of them. But everything about our referral plan looks and feels different from any prospecting activity or marketing activity we do because of who we're talking to. In prospecting and marketing, your end user of all your messaging is a prospect. It's somebody who's going to say, yep, I need a new loan. Let me talk to you. The end user of your referral strategy, of your referral plan, are your referral sources. And those people have to have a relationship with you and they have to trust you. And then on top of that, you also need to do things where you can stay top of mind and occupy space in their mind where they're thinking about you from a referral perspective. And that comes down to what you do and the language that you use. And so before we dive into those 5 steps, I just think it's really important people understand you got to have marketing, you got to have prospecting, but you also have to have a referral plan. And then of course the 5 steps teaches you how to build that and what that looks like. And so we can go through that. But I do think a great place to start is just with that kind of hey, let me level set for a second and just make sure everybody understands you have to think about referrals differently when you're deciding to get them without asking, because the 5 steps I'm about to walk you through won't seem like any other strategy you've probably ever been taught.
I love it. I love it. And one of the things you said in there, I think is so important, is not only everybody always thinks it's just business, right? Like this, when you're just talking about business and it becomes a business and all that transactional as well. And I think when it comes to, especially between loan officers and real estate agents, sometimes that ends up being that way. And it's also how they set the tone off the bat, right? Like just going into products and services and all this other stuff we talk about, that is just showing up and just being commodity off the bat. Like, hey, this is what I do. No, who are you? Who are you as a person? What are you trying to achieve? And I always call it, of course, the trap anyway. I was just speaking to one of our clients and he's like, hey, listen, what do I'm having this new realtor meeting, and what do I do? It's like, well, the number one thing you can do is think of a pendulum swing, and one side it's shrinking, the other side is posturing, and in the middle is confidence, composure, and always think of yourself as confidence, composure. And I said the second thing is there's a trap. It's a huge trap. And real estate agents, for example, will set traps with loan officers. Like, hey, well, they ask me my rates. Is that really what they want to talk about now? They just don't know what else to ask. So they're asking. All businesses are like that, right? Somebody asks a question because they don't know what else to ask. And then what do loan officers do? Go into 70, 80% of their time into presentation mode. And therefore, it's harder to get referrals or harder to be a real value, because now we're all suddenly a commodity, because all we talk about is our products and our services and presentation. rather than really knowing the person and what really is important to them and who they are really deep to the core. And we can have a relational, great, just a money magnet system of referrals here. So,
well, and it's, I love that you say that too, because a lot of times when I'm talking to folks about building out how they're going to take care of their referral sources, right? It always comes down to it's like, we need to be a pattern interrupt. Like we need to be different from everybody else. And how we do that is actually focused on the relationship.
Yeah.
And that is different for most folks because it kind of like it catches you off guard, right? To have a conversation and then not talk about rates. Like that actually could probably be something a real estate agent may remember because, and here's the thing I always tell folks, the industries I love working in the most are when you are a dime a dozen. And in every area, how many real estate agents are there? How many loan officers, mortgage brokers? Like how many, like thousands. I have yet to give a presentation in an area and have people raise their hands and then tell me there's like 2 of whatever they do in their area, right? There's like always not hundreds, there's thousands, which means there are thousands of people trying to have this conversation with the people they want referrals from. And you've got to be different. You've got to be willing to be different. And, there's specific kind of language that we teach our clients when they're in this space, particularly when they're in a space and it's the expected. Like I'm expecting you to want to have a conversation with me and want to talk about giving you my business and stuff. This is not the only time when like between real estate agents and loan folks, that's not the only time it happens. It happens in other industries too. But we teach specific language about, hey, instead of going through the front door and like asking for referrals or like being all about business, why don't we go in the side door? And we actually pay attention to actually building a relationship and what that looks like. What's so scary for people? Because it doesn't feel like always a business conversation.
Yeah.
And that scares them because they're like, wait, but I'm not talking about work, but I'm not talking about my rates, but I'm not talking about our fast turnaround and how amazing our underwriters are and right. Because nobody cares.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's not what I need to know to refer you. And this is a big issue for people. I don't actually need to know how you do what you do to refer you. Yeah. I will assume that you do an amazing job until I learn otherwise, right? I will assume you do a great job. I'm not going to assume you're going to stand up and be like, I really stink at what I do. I don't know if you want to refer to me or not. Like nobody's going to say that. I assume you do great work. That's not what it takes for me to refer you. What it takes for me to refer you is to actually like you and trust you. And where those two things happen actually comes from a relationship that isn't about business, which means we've got to come at this from an entirely different direction. But it's scary for people sometimes because they've been beaten over the heads with all this idea of like what it's supposed to look like, what these conversations are supposed to be like. And I'm like, usually they're wrong. Usually that's not what it takes and what somebody needs to actually start referring you.
Yeah. 2 things. A pattern interrupts 100%. I mean, novelty equals focus, and focus is your number one currency. 100%. You can't sell to anybody. Somebody can't refer to you. You can't influence anybody without focus, and novelty is that thing. And when you're a commodity and you're what everybody else does, you create no novelty, no focus. You're tuned out and it just doesn't work. Right. And the other thing, one of the key things you kind of started going along the lines of is that I don't need to know all what you do. I don't need to refer you. And that's 100% the truth. And that's something that, gosh, it's so hard to just, we have to pelt like pretty much like in all our trainings over and over and over. And about the 10th time, finally, someone's like, oh gosh, right. I don't need to talk about all this stuff to get business. And I can do the meetings like this. And really, here's the deal. Communication is the number one thing that a real estate agent will say, for example, they need from a loan officer. That's the number one thing. But we can't go and show up and be like, hey, I'm great in communication. What are you supposed to say? I suck in communication, right?
Terrible.
Like, I'm horrible. I'm okay. I'm pretty much, how many loan officers are there? 1,000. I'm pretty much like in the 500 range, like in there. Like you're going to say I'm great in communication. But when we have great communication, when I am talking about you, it is assumed, like you said, somebody's going to assume they're really great in communication because they are communicating with me great, and they make me feel good. They make
Right.
me feel important. Therefore, we already unconsciously think they're going to make my client feel this way, right? That's how they do business. So I don't have to say I'm great in communication. That's the whole deal. So a lot of these things are just, we understand that by the body language that somebody has, the tonality somebody has, the way somebody's showing up in these conversations, that it's implied. It's implied that you do a really good job. When you come in and you show value, it's implied you're really good at your other gig, right? Like, so when I grew as a loan officer, doing all these things, I had that coaching aspect to me, and that's why I went into coaching. And obviously it was just kind of a natural progression. I kind of had that where I was always trying to help people grow and just have business discussions. At the end of it, I didn't talk about all the rates and terms and all that stuff. And people just assumed I was pretty daggone good at my job because I knew my stuff on this other area, right? That's just the way people know to be true. Like one plus one equals two. They just think that's going to be the case, and we don't have to talk about it all the time. So love that. So Stacey, I'll let you have the floor again, but I love what you're saying there. And gosh, it's just exactly. It's not exactly. You're said it in a really eloquent, great way, like you do. But it was very, very empowering, and to people that are listening to this, and the same types of messages we always like to send. So love that you're on here, because you are the guest that we desire, because you're saying it and doing it the right way. So but yeah, I'd love to go into anything else you want to in the 5 points, or you just want to throw them in there kind of, and but you can't just get these and think you know it all. You got to get the book. Okay, you got to order the book. So give yourself this gift and grab the Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, Stacey Brown Randall. Come on now, like 5 simple steps. So you got to pick this book up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I will say, I'm going to give the 5 steps at a really high level, and you're absolutely right. The book will go into more detail and kind of explain it. And then of course, right, there's a difference between reading a book and then actually execution and implementation, right? Yes. And so for those that need help, of course, we have additional resources where we can help folks. And I think it's important for people to understand, when you decide, okay, you know what, 2022, I'm going to take referrals. I'm going to think about referrals differently, and I'm going to take them more seriously, and I'm going to take control of my referrals in a way I haven't before. You need to be willing to do something different. So some of these steps may push you out of your comfort zone, but at the end of the day, it is about doing things that are authentic to you, but are really about what your referral sources need to be able to refer you. So ultimately, the number one thing I always tell folks is, I'm going to assume you're referable, right? So like we just talked about, I'm going to assume you're good at your job. If you're not, and you need to become referable, well, that's a whole other different conversation. And I always teach you there's 3 key strategies that every business owner, right, needs to have when it comes to referrals. And the 5 steps goes to this one strategy for our existing referral sources. So I'm assuming you're referable, right? I'm assuming you've received some referrals. If you're brand new or you just haven't received a lot of referrals in your time in business, there is a strategy we teach about potential referral sources, those clients and contacts you wish were referring you. That's a strategy by itself. Getting referrals from your client experience, that's another strategy that we teach as well. But this is the low-hanging fruit one. This is the one that I think when people read the book, they can start implementing it and they can start seeing some success. And so that is number 1. Step number 1 is you got to identify who your referral sources are. And so chapter 8 in the book will walk you through how to do this in detail. I always tell folks the easiest way to do it, look back at who your clients are or have been over the last couple of years, and then identify the source of where they've come from. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and say a little prayer that you actually track this information, because that makes the step easier. If not, you're going to do this thing called walk down memory lane that is not nearly as fun. And you may be muttering some not nice words and my name in the same sentence as you do this step, because it's a lot of work if you haven't tracked where your clients, where your prospects are coming from. But if you look back over the last couple of years and you're looking at where your clients and your prospects have coming from, you're going to come up with a list of people who are your referral sources. Once you know who your referral sources are, so many things shift and change. You get to decide at that point, Do I want to cultivate these people better and take better care of them to get more referral sources? I mean, to get more referrals from them. So step one is identification. Then really the next thing you have to do is you have to build out a referral plan to take care of your referral sources. And this plan we teach with it's like this 4-part framework that we teach it. And it goes into the brain science and psychology behind why referrals happen and what actually you control within referrals and what you don't control in referrals. But it's looking at how you're going to take better care of the people who already refer you. Then you're going to factor in the language piece. What language do I need to use so that I'm never asking and always showing gratitude and thankfulness, but at the same time, still planting referral seeds that people are thinking about me from a referral perspective. Then it's super important you're always thanking for every referral you do receive. And then that referral plan helps you take care of them while you're waiting for that next referral to happen. But your referral plan is somewhere between 4 and 8 touch points in a year. This is not a daily, weekly, or even a monthly thing. You start looking like a stalker and starts looking like you're trying too hard. And then it's not going to work the way we want it to. So identify your referral sources, build a plan to take care of them, use the right language with each of the touch points within that plan. Make sure you're thanking in a handwritten thank you note for every referral received, and then take that plan and systematize it or put it into your workflow within your business so you'll actually execute on it throughout the entire year. And that's how those 5 steps fit together. But it is a strategy specific for existing referral sources. So that's why we start with identifying who's referred me in the past that I want to keep getting referrals from, and then building a system to take care of them. Of course, there are other strategies we teach for other areas of the business as well when it comes to referrals.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to go through before we kind of, start shutting this thing down and stuff like that? I know you got all books to write and clients to serve and just awesomeness to impart to others as well. But
Thank you.
gosh, I tell you, man, been a real joy, and I tell you, like, I couldn't ask for a better guest on our show for sure. So I am very grateful for you showing up here and delivering the goods and gosh, it's just it's such a instrumental piece to everybody's business to be able to generate referrals and do it at a really high level. And a lot of people just don't do it. They're uncomfortable with it. And I think some uncomfort level happens. I think some systems are lacking, and there's all these other things that lead to not getting enough referrals and building to have a good way of doing that, feeling comfortable with it, feeling good about it, feeling empowered by all your actions that you're taking, I think is so vitally important to everybody. So by the way, so if somebody wanted to get to you more, like, and they want more, give me more Stacey, where can they find you? Where is there, what you tell me all the platforms or where they could sign up or where they can find you, where they can get more
happy
resources from, et cetera.
Yeah. So home base is my website. It's the best place to go as kind of like a starting point. It's StaceyBrownRandall.com, and Stacey does have an E. But as you've mentioned, obviously the book is a great place to start. I have my own podcast, Roadmap to Grow Your Business. We're coming up on our 200th episode pretty soon. So it's a lot of work too. It's really exciting. And then of course, hopefully those resources between the podcast, the book, obviously, the articles and the things that we have, some of the things you can download from the website will be helpful in you kind of starting that journey to getting started with referrals without asking. But then of course, for those that want to go deeper, we do have our signature program is called Building a Referable Business, which is where we teach all 3 of our main key strategies, and then a ton of other situational strategies as well. And that's where we also talk about things that are industry specific as well. And that's called Building a Referable Business. But then of course, any of our strategies, they're standalone programs that we have. They're online programs, standalone as well. Building a Referable Business is more like programs plus access to me in group sessions and one-on-one. But of course, we also have this, all of the individual strategies have a program as well. It just really depends on where you want to start. I always tell folks, get the book, listen to the podcast, sign up for something, right? Join our Facebook group, Referrals Without Asking, and then just let it go from there. And if it's the right strategy and system for you, you'll know, and then we can take the next step.
Awesome. Well, you all heard it here. If you love what Stacey had to say, get the book. If you didn't love what she had to say, shame on you. I'll actually personally smack it the side of the head with her book and say, get generating more referrals. No, but thank you so much for everybody listening again, and hit a review on this sucker, and sign up for our YouTube page, Genius Loan Officer, as well, for a lot of more goodness that we have in there. This will be on that page and as well. So sign up for the YouTube, hit me a review on here, get the word out. Don't have that have the abundance mindset, that some people think, oh my gosh, I've discovered this great stuff on Genius Loan Officer podcast. I don't want anybody else to know. You listen, have an abundance mindset. You can share with other people, and they will not be worse. You will not be worse for the wear. So you will always differentiate yourself if you're truly trying to differentiate yourself, just like we spoke about today. So get those pattern interrupts out there, like Stacey talked about. Be different. Focus on the other person. Focus on being the value. And gosh, you're just going to show up differently to your relationships, and be able to share and collaborate with great folks, generating more and more referrals. Stacey, again, thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Y'all go out and crush it. Remember, limited risk equals limited income.